All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about the birth of the world's largest democracy, India. And this story, it doesn't start with a big celebration. Nope. It starts with a crisis that's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
So check this out. The year is 1947. What's this number? 8 million. That's how many refugees poured into the brand new country of India from the newly created Pakistan. I mean, just think about that. 8 million people, suddenly homeless, jobless, looking for a future in a nation that was barely a day old.
Yeah, this wasn't just some neat and tidy political handover. It was like a perfect storm of problems, all hitting at the exact same time. From the very first day, the country was literally fighting to just survive.
I mean, just take a look at this list. It's overwhelming. You've got the 8 million refugees we just talked about. Then you have 500 different princely states, kind of like mini-kingdoms, that all had to be convinced to join India. Oh, and the population? 345 million people, with massive divisions between castes and religions, and most of them living in extreme poverty. And as if that wasn't enough, the absolute unthinkable happens. Less than 6 months after independence, Mahatma Gandhi, the man they called the father of the nation, is assassinated.
So with all of that chaos as the backdrop, there was this one giant looming question. Could this place even work? I mean, you have this huge, incredibly diverse land with so many different languages, religions, and cultures. How on earth could you hold it all together as one country? Right. And the new leaders, they got it. They saw that there were two massive problems that were totally linked. You had the problem of unity, all those divisions between high and low castes, Hindus and other faiths, and then you had the problem of development. Pretty much everyone was poor. They knew you couldn't fix one without fixing the other. If one failed, the whole project would come crashing down.
So how do you even begin to tackle this? Well, you need a blueprint. You need a master plan. And for India, that plan was its constitution, a document that had to be, incredibly ambitious, but also super practical.
And who created this blueprint? This group called the Constituent Assembly. We're talking about 300 representatives from all over India. And for 3 solid years, from late 1946 to late 1949, they got together and just hammered it out. They debated, they argued, they literally designed the entire political future of the country.
And one of the first things they did was, honestly, it was revolutionary. In one single move, they gave every single citizen over the age of 21 the right to vote. Now, you might think, okay, so what? But think about it. Countries like the US and the UK, they took ages to get there, right? They did it in slow, painful stages, leaving out women or people who didn't own land. India just did it, all at once, for everybody. A huge leap of faith.
And this right here, this quote from Nehru, it really gets to the heart of another huge idea. He was absolutely insistent. India could not and would not become a Hindu Pakistan. It had to be a secular country. And that wasn't just talk. The Constitution baked it right in, guaranteed equal rights and protections for everyone, no matter their religion. Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, you name it.
But they didn't stop at political equality. No way. The Constitution went further and took a sledgehammer to centuries of social hierarchy. It officially banned the practice of untouchability, calling it a slur and a blot. It forced Hindu temples, which had been closed to lower castes, to open their doors to all. And this is huge. It created a system of reservations, setting aside seats in government and jobs for the lowest castes and tribal groups to make sure they weren't shut out.
Okay, so they have a constitution. Things are starting to look up, right? Well, not so fast. Another massive, dangerous problem pops up. How do you draw the internal map? How do you create states inside of India? And believe me, this one issue, it almost broke the country before it even got started.
See, here's the thing. Before independence, the main political party, Congress, had promised people they'd get their own states based on the language they spoke. But then, partition happened, this incredibly violent split based on religion. And leaders like Nehru and Patel got really nervous. They thought, wait a minute, if we start dividing the country up by language now, are we just creating more little partitions? Are we just going to fall apart? But the people didn't forget that promise. And this timeline shows just how intense things got. Down in the Telugu-speaking areas, people were demanding their own state. Protests were everywhere. Then, a Gandhian leader named Poti Srimamalu starts a hunger strike. He goes for 58 days, and then he dies. All hell breaks loose. There are riots, total chaos. The government's hand is forced. They had no other choice but to create the new state of Andhra. And that changed everything. It set a huge precedent. A special commission was set up, and by 1956, they were redrawing the whole internal map of India, creating states for Bengali speakers, Tamil speakers, and so on. And here's the really amazing part. The very thing the leaders feared would break the country apart actually ended up making it stronger. Giving people their own states based on language made them feel secure, not suppressed. It strengthened national unity.
All right, so the political map is starting to take shape. Now for the other huge piece of the puzzle, the economy. How do you lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty and build a modern country from scratch?
The path they chose was something called a mixed economy. Basically, it's a team effort. The government would take the lead on the really big stuff, building heavy industry like steel plants, constructing massive dams. This was all centrally managed by a planning commission. Then, the private sector would fill in the gaps, create jobs and boost production. That second five-year plan in 1956, in particular, was all about this big government-led push for industry.
So, let's fast forward. 60 years on, from the perspective of our source material, how did it all pan out? This massive, ambitious experiment, what's the final grade?
And this is where you see the great paradox of modern India. The successes? They're incredible, for real. The fact that the country is still one piece and still a democracy, that's a miracle. It has a free press, an independent judiciary. But the challenges are just as stark. Those deep divisions are still there. Dalits, the lowest caste, still face horrible discrimination. Religious clashes happen, and the gap between the rich and the poor, it's gotten even bigger.
You know who saw this coming? Dr. Ambedkar, the main architect of the whole Constitution. He basically called it decades in advance. He warned that just giving everyone a vote, political equality, wasn't going to magically fix the massive inequality in people's social and economic lives. He knew this contradiction was baked into the system from day one.
So, when you weigh it all up, what's the verdict? Success or failure?
Well, the answer isn't that simple, is it? Our source puts it this way. India hasn't been a great success, but it hasn't been a failure either. And maybe that's the whole point. Maybe the biggest success of all is simply that it's still here, that this massive, complex, diverse country survived and endured as a single democratic nation when almost everyone said it was impossible, against all the odds. And that alone, well, that's one heck of a story.